if you angled it a little bit more this way. I think Raymond's gonna watch. And Count. No, there's that group chat they made for the Honors 250 class. What if I just was like, hey, come watch the thing for extra credit? Yo, Truffle.
Yes, you could still hear. Don't write that. Don't write Yo Truffle.
What should I call them then?
Fuck sticks.
Butt sticks?
Fuck sticks.
Fuck sticks?
Don't call them butt sticks. Just say, hey, we're doing the thingy. The thing. On the interweb. Get your forehead out of shot. There's like a 12-second delay.
Wait, there's two people watching.
No,
Is
that was me. I
Who's-
count as a moderator and a viewer. It's gonna go away soon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's switch into the blanket. I'm just gonna do that just every couple of minutes.
How do I do the link?
Enjoy a lot for not a lot at Cheddar's Scratch Kitchen, where you can get over 20 entrees.
Watching my own.
Damn, I don't even count as a viewer yet.
And there's like a 12-second delay between when someone asks the question and when you submit.
But if I have this one. Where's the share? Copy?
Now you count as a viewer.
Oh, I got out of Twitch.
You can click on that and see who's watching.
It's just us.
I'm not watching.
It has you in there.
I'm not watching.
Well, this is depressing. Can you be my audience?
I am your audience.
You know, since I have this on, it'll pick you up probably.
Yep, probably. Automatically. Cute.
Is that you? Lucky ass.
Trish, we're doing a project. She's like, what? That sucks.
Wait, there's somebody watching.
Hello.
Please say your name in chat so we can give you extra credit.
Unless it's me.
I don't know, you can probably open it. Chester, you're really killing the mood here.
Is he?
No,
I think he's enhancing it.
I think he is. I think he's adding life. It's still just us.
Alright, we'll wait until 3:05 and then start doing
Yeah.
it. We can just talk.
You can start playing. Those SpongeBob tampons? They're very absorbent, I hear.
Who lives in the vagina? Who lives in the vagina? The young king. SpongeBob tampax absorbent and no blood disease. And then bleeding me something you wished and drop on the deck and cry like a bitch. Come on, SpongeBob tampons. You came in at the right time.
Oh, there's two people. If you're from our Honors 250 class, put in your name so we can give you extra credit.
I seen it.
I tried to move it so you could be in there. Didn't work.
Oh.
Oh shit, there's 6 people now. Is it 3:05? It's not 3:05 yet.
Don't anger the lights.
Don't anger them? Damn.
Oh wait, it might make you make a Twitch account for long. Chat.
No. Why don't you just be guest?
I have no idea.
I've done it before. Just a guess. What? Are you laughing at us?
This is a high quality production, man.
This is gonna give me an A for being creative.
That's probably all you get the A on.
Yeah.
I still don't know what I'm doing for.
No, I got plenty of history here.
Ready?
I guess.
Not true.
Take a quick step back now. Okay, are we going?
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's nobody here, so it's just us talking to ourselves.
I'm not talking.
You just talked.
You're talking.
Okay, should we get the time?
No talking.
I'm gonna start at 9:30.
Alright.
So we know. Remember 9:30.
What happens at 9:30?
So we can do the clip. Does that know how this works?
I don't know what you're talking about. Go ahead.
Okay, so today on We Play Video Games, we're going to be talking about the history of video games, specifically centered around the Cold War. The reason we're doing this around the Cold War is because they were invented during the Cold War and they kind of reflect
War never
the
changes.
kind of commercialism and that kind of became, like, grew out of like the nuclear family and us trying to prove we're better than the
In the year
communists by buying things.
1945,
Although this became more commercialized towards the end of the Cold War, it still
Serving in the
contributed. And also some of the advancements and
wondered when he'd get to
the
go
technology
home
that
to his
allowed us to
wife.
play video games.
And the
kind
sunny
of
you never
reflected
see.
how we became more advanced, how we developed
He
science.
got his wish. When the U.S. ended World
We're
War
gonna start.
II.
We're gonna be doing this in kind of a timeline fashion. Where I'm gonna be doing this in timeline fashion, and we're gonna start in 1952, where a British professor named Douglas,
War never
he was
changes.
You're gonna knock him
doing
dead
his
at the Veterans
dissertation
Hall tonight, hun.
in
You think?
University
Absolutely.
of Cambridge,
Now
I think
get
it was.
ready and stop hogging the mirror.
And
Right.
he was trying to prove how like computers and people could interact with each other. So he made a game of tic-tac-toe, or he called it Noughts and Crosses because they're fancier than we are. But it's basically tic-tac-toe, where the person would input their choice, and then the computer would put one back, and the computer was programmed to play a perfect game of tic-tac-toe.
Mustache, huh?
And he did this basically on a huge calculator that was like the other computers of the day that took up like an entire room. So that's what he did his on. And then in 1958, I talked about Tennis for Two in class. That was made by William Higginbotham.
This new
Higginbotham.
haircut's really working for me.
He worked at Los Alamos for a period of time and helped create the timing system for the nuclear bomb. And then in 1940s and later on, he went to work at the Brookhaven National Laboratory, where he made like a game for their open house, and he made it out of the computer they had there in order to prove that like the stuff they were doing, the computer stuff they were doing, was relevant to like average everyday people. So he made just a ball that went back and forth on a screen. There wasn't any kind of scoring system or anything. He just wanted it for people to like play as. Then in 1962, a student at MIT made something called Space War, which was another like, primitive game where there would be like two sticks and they'd go around this like fake imaginary planet and like shoot at each other until somebody died. That was made on a PDP-1, which is kind of a kind of computer that universities at the time were favoring to do research on.
Thanks, Kazuo.
But then the real commercialized video game industry started in 1967. It was started by Ralph Baer, who was
More the same.
like the head of the Saunders Association. He called it the brown box. It was basically
Looks
a
like
primitive
milk got
version of like
delivered.
our consoles, but all it really was
Sounds
a
pretty steak.
a
Great
PCB
plus.
with 4 dozen transistors and some diodes, and
Hun,
it didn't actually have any like graphics. You had to get like a plastic sticker and you like stick it on the screen, and that's how you would play your game.
I was nervous at first,
But
Codsworth
even
is
though it
really
was
good with Sean.
it was a commercial flop. It only sold like 20,000 units. It died out in like a couple years. But then in the same year, Atari released Pong, which a lot of people credit as like the first like commercially successful game. But they released the arcade version. And then 3 years later, Atari released a home version of Pong, which was as big as a commercial success as the arcade version was. But Magnavox, which was a company that made the brown box, or that took up the brown box, they sued
Can
Atari
you get that?
because they said it was too similar to one of their games. And eventually, like, even though that company like
Vault-Tec calling.
didn't make any money off of sales, they got like $100 million out of suing different like third-party
Vault-Tec?
companies that would later on make
Remind me
games
again?
based off of
Why,
theirs.
we're about you, sir, and helping secure
And but like
your
nowadays
future.
we have
You see,
consoles that like you
Vault-Tec
take a
is
disc
the
out and you put it
foremost
back in. And
builder
the
of
first
state-of-the-art
real version of this
underground
was the
fallout
Fairchild
shelters.
Channel F that was made in
Vault, if you
1976.
will. Luxury
And you had like the
accommodations
similar
where you can
cartridges
wait
that
out
like the
the
NES
horrors
had
of
or the
nuclear
Atari had,
devastation.
but it was a commercial
You can't
flop.
begin to know how happy I am to
But it was still a
finally
first.
speak with you.
But the
I've been trying
actual
for
first
days.
successful
It's a matter of
removable game
utmost
system was in
urgency, I
1977
assure
that
you.
was made also by Atari. It was very simple. It was made out of a
I'm here now.
PCB board,
So you are.
a microprocessor, a
So
graphics
you
chip,
are.
and had 128
Now,
bytes of
I
RAM.
know you're a busy fellow,
even
so I won't take up much of your time.
Megabytes. Just
Time being
bytes.
a
And in
precious
the
commodity.
late 70s and early
I'm
80s,
here
there was a
today
big
to
like
tell
kind of
you
boom of games, like famous games like
Sounds
Space
great.
Invaders,
Oh,
Donkey
it is.
Kong,
Believe you
and
me.
even Activision,
Now,
the
you're
company
already
that's known for
cleared
making Call of
entrance
Duty and
in
other
the
shooters
unforeseen
nowadays,
event of
got its roots, or it started out in the late
atomic annihilation.
70s.
I just need to
And
verify
as
some
I'm talking,
information. That's all.
note that like all of these consoles
Sure,
and games
let's do it.
were made
Splendid.
based off of new
Splendid.
emerging technologies like
Now,
like
let's
microprocessors and
see.
transistors, as Hiroshi talked about during class. Because transistors started being developed so rapidly, we were able to make better and better things, and something like video games like reflects that. But continue on with the history of video games in the 1980s there was a big crash because people saw money in the gaming industry, so these tiny third-party companies started making a ton of games, so there was an oversaturation of these low-quality, cheap games, and because of that, several companies went bankrupt and they started failing. The game that is known to be like the worst game out of all existence, called
Wonderful.
E.T., that
That's
was made by
everything.
Atari, was
I'm
made
just
during this
gonna
time.
Walk this over to the vault.
That just kind of shows
Congratulations
That
on
is
being
the worst
prepared
game.
it
for
is the worst game ever made, and
Um,
it came out of the video
thanks
game
again.
crash.
Hey,
But
it's
luckily,
peace of mind.
a small little company
worth a little
called
paperwork,
Nintendo
For you
came
and
out of the
Sean,
woodworks
no
in
price is too
1985 and made the NES, which
Good
is the
answer.
Nintendo
high. I
Entertainment
have my
System.
moments.
And they basically had the same idea as the Atari. They made, instead of like the Atari had like a little like analog stick, like the Prindle we have in cars, except it's for
You just
moving.
said the word Prindle out loud.
I call it the Prindle, okay, leave me alone. And instead of having the Prindle analog stick, we had a pad controller. And the interesting thing about the NES is that from a commercial standpoint, they were more successful because they took something called
Spin the mobile a bit. He loves that.
the loss leader, or they used their console as a loss leader, which meant that they would sell like the console
Hey,
itself
how's my little
like
gal?
cheap,
Much better now.
and they would
huh?
make all of their
Listen,
money
after
from selling the
breakfast?
individual games. Like nowadays, like a PS4 goes for about
Yeah,
$300.
sounds like fun.
But the games themselves make each cost, usually a new coming out costs $60,
What's wrong?
and people usually buy like 10, 20 games for their consoles. 60 times 20.
Yes,
This is a math class, but that's a lot of money you're spending. And so that's they really started that model of, here's this cheap console, and now give us more money. And that kind of ties in with the whole commercialism of the time, where people just wanted to spend money to prove that they were American, and that really helped perpetuate that model of the living.
My God.
But also the NES and like the video game like industry brought about
We need to get to the
really
vault.
famous franchises that still exist today, like Legend of Zelda, Metroid, Final Fantasy. Most Metroid and Final Fantasy were each made by different companies. But because of the success of the NES, new companies were bred out of that, because of that success. And then in 1989, the Game Boy was made by Nintendo, which was similar tech to a console, but it was handheld. It was kind of how reflects how we took huge computers that used to take a room full of space, and now we hold them in the palm of our hands, and the same kind of thing happened with consoles, and that we went from an NES to a
We need to
Game
get
Boy.
in. We're on the list.
And the Game Boy had its own display, had a CPU, had a graphics card, all in its own little tiny device.
ahead.
And out of that, other franchises were made, like Tetris, Pokemon, all of these
What's gonna
made
happen to all those
Nintendo
people outside the gate?
boatloads of money. And now we're reaching towards the end of the Cold War. The official end of the Cold War is supposed to be 1991, where the Berlin Wall fell. And when the Berlin Wall fell, that's supposed to be like, oh, we're don't have as many
Almost
tensions
there.
with
We're
Russia,
gonna be
like
okay.
era of peace.
I love you.
But like, funnily
Both of
enough, in
We love you
1991,
too.
there was a real first console war between Nintendo and Sega, because Sega released the Genesis console, which was 16-bit, and because of like the new technology and everything, like people, it really took off. But then Nintendo had to release a 16-bit NES to kind of combat that, and so the rivalry between the two companies kind of it began the first console war. And after the Cold War, just like a few years afterwards, even though it's supposed to be, I guess, a peaceful time, we actually got the first like violent video games. Kind of like the famous ones would be like Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat, which are known to be stereotypically violent. They were so violent that like there were court cases held in like the U.S. about, hey, should we be showing our kids this?
Better future underground.
Did it really?
So we just
Yes, up the stairs.
And because of like the violence in video games, Sega had to create its own like advisory council to like review every game that they made, and out of that there became the Entertainment Software Rating Board, which is still around, which is how you get ratings on games, just like there are ratings for like movies and TVs. The video game industry had to make that also.
Just this way.
And I talked about in class how the video game industry nowadays is worth over $100 billion, and over 1 billion people play video games worldwide.
All right.
So this idea that these guys in like their own separate labs made these like interactive computer games grew into this like huge commercial industry shows how people were really trying to make money during that time off of technology, because the first few guys, Higginbotham and Douglas, were using it for like scientific purposes. Like Douglas was just trying to get his doctorate. Higginbotham was just trying to make this open house presentation. And Douglas didn't make a patent for it, but Higginbotham did. But that's just because everything you do for the government you have to make a patent for. Like the government patents it. So neither of them were trying to make money, but it grew into such a money-centered thing that it kind of just shows.
Contaminate and depressurize you before we head deeper in.
And that's kind of the end of my little spiel. And since there's nobody watching, we can't really answer any questions.
Resident secure.
Wait, there was nobody watching, right?
Do you have any questions?
Do I have any questions?
Not you.
Oh.
Them.
There's nobody watching.
There's 4 people watching.
Oh shit.
They don't count?
That said 2 like 10 seconds ago. But they didn't hear my presentation, so what are they going to ask me about?
You guys have questions about the history of video games and how it relates to the Cold War? How's that?
Who's watching?
I don't know.
They have names, or they just guess?
They write in chat, we'll see.
How does this game relate to the Cold War? Well, Fallout specifically. See, this is based in an alternate universe where the Cold War never really ended. So the tensions kind of kept going up until the year 2077. I think is when the bombs dropped.
Yep, that's when this one takes
Was
well.
So
it depends on which Fallout you're talking about. The story changes.
Does it? Yeah. One of the most recent one, I guess you could say that it ended in 2077. Because instead of, Berlin Wall falling, everybody being all peaceful, China, Russia, and the US all make the shit out of each other. And everybody died. And now we're just living in the wastes of society. That's how that game relates to the Cold War. Damn. We can make a metaphor out of this. I don't know.
That's all of the superpowers of the world using each other. And that's what happened to the rest of the world.
You can say that she represents the innocence of mankind and how the Cold War took that away from us.
Right.
Who's Arrowwolf 15?
Put your real name in so that way we can give you credit.
Yeah, if you're in our class,
class,
say your name and we'll slide some extra credit in your DMs.
I mean, we'll try. Mitchell won't not get that.
Why?
I don't know. Do you have that power?
Yeah, she said it in class. Hey, if you guys go, I'll give you extra credit. Okay, cool. Do you have any questions about the history of video games? You probably missed most of that. We're just gonna watch it. That looks like you, Johnny. That legit ass just looks like you. Go punch a cockroach.
You go punch a cockroach.
But Tristan's not here.
Not the Tristan from our class.
Yeah, not the Tristan from our class, a different Tristan.
Malfunction in emergency exit door override. Please contact your Vault-Tec maintenance representative for service.
So we went from 10 to about 10 to 25. It's pretty good. Shit. Eat it.
Giant.
I'm not gonna eat it, I can't cook it yet.
No, just eat it.
Hell.
Walk there. You'll be like Dr. Manhattan.
I'm not walking in there.
Dr. Manhattan, come on. Whatever, you did.
I like how the cockroach hasn't seen me yet.
Where is everyone?
I think I saw you.
Doesn't matter. Hey,
So how's your day going, Naveed?
there's no point in power attacking me.
Wait, there's somebody else watching.
If you have questions about the history of video games and how it relates to the Cold War, now's the time to ask.
Yes.
Is
Who's
this
watching?
all that's left? Is anyone alive?
Done.
Did anyone get out?
Who's Cog Whistle? Wait, who's KDog4944?
Doesn't matter. Hello. I ain't got time for story. We're just playing.
Stop showing us memes. We're doing very important
Got
work.
a friend teaching the night before your exam saves most of your courses. Mention him and say thanks.
What?
I don't know.
Or her.
I don't get it.
You don't get it.
I don't get it.
That's what I'm gonna do for you.
Nice.
For the
Coming
freaking
back later for you.
physics exam.
I need to worry about math first.
I need to worry about physics. I could get a 50 on the calc final and still end up with a B.
How did he just...
Does anybody have any questions about the history of the Cold War? Or not the history of video games?
And how they relate to the Cold War?
Yeah, there we go.
Kind of like what our project's about.
Yeah.
Well, his project. I'm just here because...
He's playing video games, I'm just watching. I already gave my spiel.
Spiel!
Unless you guys want me to say it again.
Oh god, please no. Once was enough.
I wasn't that bad. Okay, it was pretty bad.
Pretty bad.
Alright, we're gonna be...
Am I the only one
Are we
left?
gonna be sending all of this to her or just me talking?
Alright.
Let's just send her the whole thing. Hey, Dr. Mitchell, what's up? I hope you like this. Well, you're watching this at home probably sometime.
She's not watching this at all.
Great.
She's gonna be like, oh, they sent me the thing. Done.
In combat.
Not anymore.
Damn, they all left.
Dusty ass screen.
Doesn't that thing have batteries?
Oh, it runs off of nukes.
Makes sense.
They said it in the intro that we skipped.
It's been a while since I've seen that intro. I'm too busy murdering the Brother of Steel. Oh shit, that's my next mission. I get to blow up their airship. Oh, and kill that older guy. I really want his outfit.
Door cycling sequence initiated. Please stand back.
Don't even talk to Codsworth, just keep running.
Oh god.
You're supposed to wait until the
You're
bridge
supposed
goes
to
out.
wait. thought I could make the jump.
You don't have enough agility.
But I can hop that and land perfectly with.
How did you make yourself buff?
You hit the body button.
The fuck?
But it's muscular.
The fuck?
Yeah, here, look.
I don't remember that.
Is it gonna take me all the way? Okay. Body.
I did not see that. Oh, you look like an anorexia victim.
An anorexia?
It's a problem in America these days.
The world will agree that it's the opposite.
Enjoy your return to the surface.
That's true.
And thank you for choosing Vault-Tec.
It's true. I'm turning Twitch off on my phone because
That was Ivan's project.
that was.
Thanks, Naveed.
He's not even watching anymore.
Naveed.
He's not watching.
David? Like David, but with an N? Should have asked. I don't feel bad.
War never changes. Wouldn't the radiation just kill you though? Like all the leftover
It's
radiation?
been 200 years. It's probably dissipated by a little bit.